Hello, everybody, and welcome back to yet another episode of Demystifying AI for MSPs. Today, we have a heck of an episode, and I'm super excited for this one. So for those of you just tuning in, if this is your first time, welcome. My name is Will Dowling. I am the host of this show, and I'm a product marketing manager here at ConnectWise, and I have an awesome panel for you guys today. I'm going to go ahead and let our remote guest introduce himself first, and then we'll come back to the guys here in the studio. So Ben, tell everybody about yourself.
Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. I am Ben Schreiner. I'm the head of AI and modern data strategy business development here at AWS.
Awesome, man. We're glad to have you with us today. That is a mouthful of a title.
It is. It's word wraps if we had business cards.
I love it. And our in-house panel today, too.
Yeah, so my name's Kyle Jackson. I am the Director of Programs here for Innovation at ConnectWise.
And Keith Sartain, Senior Director of Internal IT for ConnectWise.
All right. So before,
Keith, you've had a bit of a week, haven't you?
It's a little bit of a week. I mean, I shout out to all the people that had it tough. I didn't have power. I slept in the back of my car. That is like smallest violin. Who cares? Like the things that people have gone through in the last week with this storm is crazy, and a lot of travel and a lot of cutting limbs and helping neighbors, and it's refreshing to see the level of support.
Yes,
people in Florida, especially when there's a storm, the people that rally together to support others. I know that people are still affected. People in North Carolina got it even tougher in many ways.
Yeah.
Shout out to all the good people helping and trying to make things better for your neighbors. But it's been a little bit of a stressful week, but mine is small potatoes compared to what a lot of people have been through.
And we're going to put Jess on the spot, but ConnectWise is actually willing to help too. So if you're an MSP and you're impacted, let us know. We've actually got a foundation put together where we're willing to assist where we can in any way, shape, or possible. So
yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Kyle.
Yep.
All right. So I always like to start off with the topic, but before I jump into that one today, if you guys have comments, if you guys have questions, today's a great day to ask them. Post them in the comments section, and as we see them pop in, we'll make sure we address those. So we want your interaction. We want you to ask questions. We want you to be curious. So I like to kick things off every week with my favorite question, and that's what's got you excited this week in the world of AI? And Ben, I think I want to kick it off with you, man. What's got you excited this week?
Yeah, this week, if I'm honest, it's actually a carryover from last week. Our CEO of Amazon, Andy Jassy, was at Climate Week in New York. It was a big gathering of folks looking at this marble that we all share, and sustainability and all that goes into that. When we talk about the compute power and AI and the consumption, that's again a balancing act that we all need to take into consideration. And we as a company take it obviously very seriously with our green efforts, both on energy as well as chip design to make them more efficient. But I think that coming together of, hey, we all share this place, it's changing. You see the weather patterns and so forth. That to me brings it all together. We talk about LLMs and what these bots can do for us, but in the grand scheme of things, we also have to look at the impact and keeping things in balance. So to me, that's that one that really resonates with me, and I just want to provide some visibility into that and our involvement in those projects.
Hey man, now mine looks really, really shallow. So
that was my intent, Kyle, all along.
Yes, you gotta follow that. Oh my goodness.
I love it. No, you're right. Sustainability is a huge topic. Like, especially with as much power as we're pulling for a lot of these LLMs. Like, sustainability is something that everyone has to think about, and I'm really glad to hear you guys are kind of leading the way on that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's power, but the other thing that I like to bring people's attention to is it's water consumption too. The cooling in these things are it's not trivial, and water is a pretty precious resource for us around the world. So building chips that consume less power and require less cooling is a double benefit. So again, there's still a lot more work to do, but we are making progress. And it is important, and it needs to be important for all of us.
Absolutely agree with you there. So thanks for bringing that one up. I love that topic. All right,
All right,
Kyle, you
Kyle.
ready? You
Top-
ready to
well,
fill your
top
diminished
Kyle.
topic?
Well, I mean, the transition here is speaking of chips.
Yeah.
NVIDIA released within the last couple weeks their own model, which isn't crazy to think about, right? They're in the throes of it, but it is interesting that the hardware manufacturer who, the entire world is seemingly leaning on for, hey, how can I get GPUs? The more GPUs, the better, right? As these models grow, they released their own 72 billion model. So this is interesting from that regard. And you would think, hey, why would they do that? Because from a performance perspective, it seems to be competing with all the top models right now.
Yeah.
Why would they go after that? Well, if you recall in some of the recent updates of what's got you excited, just about all these guys are looking at the hardware component and saying, hey, I think we want to build our own chips. So as OpenAI and Meta and Apple and all these guys look to build their own hardware and cut NVIDIA out of that, why wouldn't NVIDIA chase model building? And they've done it. So it's interesting. The key starting prediction list here. It's interesting to think that we're going to have maybe 10, 12 foundational models at the end that win. In the final battle of this. Who are those 10, 15, 20 companies going to be? What's that going to be? And NVIDIA's put their foot in the ring here and say, hey, we don't just want to build it. We want to compute it and make it work too. So that's interesting. Who knows what it means? But it's they're they had a little bit of a hit in the market last week. But other than that, I mean, they're a marquee company right now. They're driving. They're in every conversation. They just added a new one to have about NVIDIA. So,
their world models are interesting. So when we say world models, they're actually modeling the physical world and avatars that operate in that world. But they're working to make that transferable to robotics, right? So that's one of the challenges with robotics is we thought that you'd be able to point to all of the video on the internet and say, train yourself on this, but it turns out that it kind of needs to be annotated, that you have to have a little more structure around it to give this kind of 3D representation of a 2D picture so that a robot can train on that data. So people are going in and annotating it, and that's one way to do it. But another way that NVIDIA is looking at is they're actually creating virtual worlds. You can kind of think of it as a Minecraft world with a fake avatar in it that can interact with it, and it can learn. So it starts out making movements that seem very non-human or that you're having a seizure, but over time with the goals and the reinforcements set up the right way, it can navigate that. And now they're working to say, okay, if I have a robot that is modeled the same way as my avatar, then now I can use that as a training set, and rather than using the real world as a training set. So these are interesting developments. When we get to when it's time for 2025 predictions, I only touched on robotics in 24, but I do think that that's a slope that is going at least as fast as a transformer. Factory-based robotics, I think, is a real thing that we'll be talking about in large scale. I only touched on it in my 24 predictions, but I would say that's something to think about.
And I would say the other one right there, along with AI and robotics, is AR and VR, right? And Meta this week you saw one of the biggest nerds on the planet playing with his $10 billion toy. It took 10 years to make with the Orion glasses, which is pretty cool from an augmented mixed reality perspective to have that form factor. But who knows? I mean, the cool thing about this, and what we would like to focus on here, Ben, is the cool thing is technology is racing forward on all fronts. And what's that going to look like in the next couple of years? What are our kids going to do? Engaging in a classroom with a calculator was new 50 years ago. It's commonplace now. Are they going to carry forward bots and so it's just going to change everything. It's just super excited to be a part and alive right now. So
what do you guys think? AR kind of the new future standard future for the younger generations?
It's hard. I think augmented has its place. That's the slope of that. People have projected. It hasn't materialized yet. Maybe the device hasn't been right. Maybe we're still on the Palm and we need the iPad. I don't know, but I haven't, that curve to me hasn't gained traction. It's still IPv6 to me. It's coming, but we don't know when. The other ones already have traction, like there's tractions.
Yeah,
and so I'm watching that one closely, but I want to see it get traction.
Ben, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think the momentum that you guys are describing, I think, is going to lift all tides. You're starting to see some of the difficulties in programming AR, VR, and so forth. As that gets easier for developers and they can do it faster, you'll see quicker turns and quicker iterations, and the speed and capabilities will go up. It's been relatively slow going. I mean, I remember talking AR, VR, let's say 10 years ago ish.
Yeah.
Early days, right, for safety and training and so forth. And again, I think you're going to see more and more applications as the barriers to entry, the speed to development go down, and the capabilities go up. And that combination, I think, applies across a broad swath of emerging technologies that are all going to benefit from kind of this explosion in again, capabilities, but also speed to market.
Awesome.
Yeah. And I think we may have mentioned it here before that some people think the iPhone moment was purely Steve Jobs' vision, but the cellular networks had to get to a certain point, and the speed had to get to a certain point, and screen sizes, the touch screen sizes had to get cheaper, and there was a convergence of all kinds of technologies that a vision and technologies at the right point made the iPhone moment. But it did take a set of processing power and cellular network speeds so we could download music and things like that had to converge. And I think, when we talk about AR, VR, maybe it can't be this big clunky helmet. It's got to be miniaturized, and it's got to be something that's aesthetically not so nerdy. But, when those things get right, there's a lot of development that'll materialize quickly for those devices.
Well, Keith, you don't love the cyberpunk aesthetic?
Well, not exactly. No.
All right. So, Keith, what's got you excited this week, man?
Well, there are a few things we could touch on. I'm going to try to keep it brief because to give the star of our show some time. But OpenAI Dev Day is one thing that I'll just mention. What they did with voice, and I think this is one of the things we talk about is what the new voice API makes it so simple that some of the things you used to have to do, you don't have to do anymore. But it also means that some startups that did those other things a little better so that you didn't have to do them are probably obviated like overnight. So these are things that we have to watch. So as you build things, we have to know what the horizon is that the big guys won't obviate it. So, but great technology for their voice. I think there's applicability across a lot of service agents and things like that. So that was big. Salesforce had their big show, and they talked about get this AI, their agentic framework and all the things they want to do with agents. They're even talking about offset of a human, which a lot of people are still man in the middle. Microsoft still, says man in the middle. A lot of people still by their contract you have to do man in the middle. But we knew that there would be a day when we say we're doing offload like Klarna does or some of the other guys and doing full offload. They're aiming for that, or at least touting that. I think there's a lot of work between a demo at Dreamforce and being able to deliver that. But that we're starting to talk about human replacement instead of human augmentation. So maybe normalizing that conversation. But the one I wanted to talk about, so I just talked about two that aren't the one, but the one I talked about is MIT's liquid model. So they released some research that it's using, and the reason we bring this up is because all of the rave has been about transformers. Transformers 7 years old now, right? We had convolutional, we had several different kind of networks, and a few other competitors have shown their face over the years, but not really disrupted the transformer. But all of the rage and everything, the T and GPT, which is the transformer, but there's that doesn't really do much for data. It doesn't really do much for time series. And there's a lot of other fields in AI that aren't just language models. The language models have just taken off and let us interact with it using the query language we know, which is broken English for me. That's really what broke down the barrier to AI is natural language communication. And so the T in transformer was a big thing, but there's other types. So at least touch on the idea that MIT did some research, and they do a lot of research, but this liquid neural network is what they're branding it. Derives somewhat from the way it's biology, but they're no longer using matrix math. They're using differential equations. So for guys like, I don't know, me, that were just getting their head wrapped around how all of math works with transformers, now I got to learn something or not learn something even tougher. But for time series data, it's really the one key differentiation, and one of the things people are looking for as we do AI is how do we keep learning? Because I can tell you, transformers, it's set in stone. Now you can do some fine tuning for some of the models, and you can do retrieval augmentation, but for the most part, we kind of set in stone what our model can and can't do, what it knows and doesn't know, set in stone, and then you process through it, but it doesn't continue to learn like a human does. So you have to put an extraordinary amount of training up front to make sure it understands all of its edge cases, because it's not going to learn those. And so the liquid neural net has a way, especially for time series data. So for us that have been in observability, we can imagine a few extra use cases that might be fantastic for, that we can do time series data and keep learning and keep reinforcing our weights over time to get even smarter with the data sets we have. So that's mine.
Very cool. I love it. All right, so let's dig into some discussion topics today. So one topic that I know we want to kind of dig into and talk about is the importance of data in the world of AI. I know this is something that Keith enjoys going on rants about. Ben, I hear you are also a passionate fan of good data. So let's talk about why is data so important? And specifically, can we even define good versus bad data?
Great question. It's absolutely critical. For those listening, it's critical for the training of the models themselves. It's critical for the augmentation of the models, so they understand your business or your customers. And that data, again, needs to be in a form that can be consumed or understood, because it is, again, and everybody's heard this, right? The garbage in, garbage out. But the other thing I want everybody to understand is protecting data. So we talk about quality of data and everything else, but there's a security element to all this too, that everybody just needs to be eyes wide open. You don't want personal identifiable information, things that could get you in trouble, getting into a chatbot and being shared, out publicly. And again, there are examples where these things are happening, by accident. I speak at a bunch of security conferences to CISOs, and I said, hey, what are you doing? Right? How do you get control of this? But your people are using publicly available bots, right? Or an app on their phone. And how are you controlling them from cutting and pasting client information into the tool so that they can get a summary or a better email or whatever? And the answer is, gosh, I don't know that I'm doing a good job there, right? And so I the data as an input, as a resource is really important, but from an AWS perspective and for all of your customers and your MSPs customers, that data protection element is really important. And I think that needs to be, part of the thought process is where did the data come from?
Right.
How do I ensure, that I'm protecting if you have intellectual property, or if you have, again, sensitive information that needs to be protected, or payment information, which, again, everybody does who's in business has payment information somewhere. Those are the things that I think it not intentionally glossed over. I don't think anybody's doing it deliberately, but I'd like to make sure we bring it to the forefront that we keep data security as part of the conversation, and where does it fit, and making sure that it's part of your strategy as you go into an AI.
Absolutely, man.
Leveraging AI.
Well, that starts with what are the terms and conditions of this bot I just signed up for?
Yeah.
Or more importantly, what are the terms and conditions of the bot that my employee who didn't tell me just signed up for? And is it sharing information? Is it taking my prompts? Is it leveraging that for learning? There's a whole list of those things that as IT practitioners, unfortunately, we need to be aware of, and it's hard to manage. That's a movable target that is very difficult to actually get
Kyle,
your head around.
I'm glad you said that. I've been doing a public service announcement because I'm also big on AI ethics. I think you've seen on my LinkedIn post, Kyle. But for those who don't know, LinkedIn changed their privacy settings on September 11th, and I'd encourage you to go have a look at your settings and look at the data security. And they opted everyone in to helping train their model. And personally, I think they should have asked. But I think everybody should, make that decision for themselves. Again, data is valuable, but I do think it's something you should protect if it's yours. If it's your company's, you need to protect it. And I think being very transparent is important as we go forward on what the use is, or what or how you protect it if you want to.
I think we learned that Meta did the same thing, right? So we learned
Yes,
in arrears that Meta has been, so all your Facebook posts and Bora Bora are now free game.
It's a whole nother level of you are the product.
Yeah.
Right. And it's certainly from a value creation perspective. If you're going to leverage me as the product, come on. I mean, let's share the wealth.
Yeah. I don't like being voluntold that I'm the product,
Yeah. And I think
or not told.
Or not voluntold. Exactly.
Yeah. And I think that we all kind of know already that all your data, like you get ads that are specific to you. There's personalization that's been happening forever.
Yeah.
So as AI does personalization, maybe that will be in your face, maybe it won't, but it's happening, right? But it has been happening. Every Facebook thing you see is an algorithm based on how it knows you, and it's collected all kinds of data. But you can't go to YouTube without what you did in Facebook being known over there. And the cross-reference of all of that data set that personalizes things for you or creeps on you, however you want to look at it. But that's, as we look at features for AI, I think Microsoft put something in people's face that they were uncomfortable with. But it was like, okay, well, you got to see how it's done. Does that mean it's worse than all the others that you can't see how it's done? So I do think that there's we're probably going to have to get comfortable with the fact that if we have free services online, that people are going to use that information.
There's no free puppies, as they say.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But it's equally exciting. It's equally exciting to see how the bar is being moved. What these large companies, and I'll include Amazon, right? How you guys are able to wield the technology. And you guys, your sister company, your parent company, the retail side of the business has always pushed the envelope with technology and driven innovation with that. And just the sheer fact that you guys are doing predictive shipping for the things that I think I'm going to buy just based off the trends, it's incredible. Like some of the stuff I'm okay with, right? As a consumer, I'm okay with that. Some of the stuff I'm okay with. Some of it maybe not so much, but I don't want you guys. I don't want you large, guys who are building these worlds to stop, because the reality is the outcomes are going to be things we've never considered, things we've never thought of, and you're solving problems in ways we never even would have gotten to. So it's amazing to watch. I have a Google search saved on Amazon patents, just because you guys are always leading the way. I love seeing just kind of what you guys are doing. It's really cool to see. Yeah, so it's really fascinating from that perspective. But I love where the technology is going to take us.
Yeah.
There's all kinds of reasons why we need to be afraid and scared of it, but on the other side of that coin is some really brilliant use cases for how the world's going to be better, how we're going to learn more, how technology is going to progress. So I'm super bullish about what this means for my kids and their kids and what the world's going to look like. But it's just the unknowns, right, Ben? It's just the unknowns, and that's where the security and the compliance and all that stuff comes in. We just don't know. We've got to make sure we're checking boxes.
Oh, I mean, and
we talk quite a bit about just responsible AI, right? And I think that's the balancing act, is just being responsible and holding ourselves, even as a large technology company, to a higher standard. That what we're doing is, with security in mind, with good intent, with protecting the data, and again having that approach, I think is important, and that's what we're trying to get out into the community, is making sure that everybody sees that as the opportunity, and shares that responsibility, because that's really what it comes down to, is sort of having that check and balance so that you have the benefits, and you mitigate any of that downside.
Absolutely. Now, on that, let's kind of dig into some of like what do you see as some of the best practices for data whenever AI is involved, man? Like, it's a topic we like to talk about, and I like to get everybody's viewpoints on it. So everyone seems to have different ideas of what is the best practice where data is involved with AI.
Yeah, but best practices, it's really getting your arms around what you have and what you need. Where we like to approach things is actually working backwards from the problem that you're trying to solve, and making sure you have the data and the access to the data that you need. I think, especially with AI, in many of my conversations, they're with well-intended technologists who are present company, maybe included, I don't know, right? But it's the shiny thing, and everybody wants to play with it, and I think that's great, because the curiosity is very high, and it should be. It is cool and fun, but I think some companies have sort of lost sight of what problem are we actually solving, right? And so we're seeing a fair amount of stalled proofs of concepts, or things that don't go anywhere because it never had an intent of solving a problem. And so I like to say, you need to start with the problem, then figure out what data you need to solve that problem, and then talk about a model, algorithm, or a tech stack to solve that, right? And I think in far too many cases, it's gone in the reverse, where I have a model and let's see what we can do with it. And again, I'm all for experimentation. I highly encourage it, but I do think some, all investments of time and money should have a return, and it could be just in educating yourself. But if you're running a business, time is your most precious resource, and you want people doing things that are going to have an impact. So knowing what data you need, I think you're going to find you have a bunch of data inside your organization that could be more valuable. I think there's new ways to consume additional data from other sources. Like we have our data exchange, where you can pull in information or third-party information to kind of augment whatever it is you're trying to do. And then again, putting it in a controlled environment, a secure environment, so that those security access is appropriate, right? So the executive team at my company can see way more information than maybe an individual who operates in a particular state, right? So having that role level access and those controls, I think, are important. I think just throwing it all into the data lake and hoping good things happen, good things could happen. I'm not saying that isn't without value, but I think having security top of mind is really important, so that you're not having a data leak in your organization that you didn't anticipate. And that requires forethought, right? So to me, that's a best practice, is just having a forethought of what data do you need, how are you going to secure it, and then how are you going to expose it in a way that more people can benefit, which is ultimately what most companies are looking for, is how do I have more people benefit from the data that I have or have access to?
Absolutely.
Very good call out.
We've had some of these conversations, and one of the questions that MSPs often ask is, okay, where do we start?
Yeah.
Right. And I think the advice that I typically give is, hey, you know what? It's okay to start with a small problem. Yeah. You don't have to start with the biggest thing on the list. Start with a small problem. As long as there's a return, as long as you're like solving some of these issues and you kind of work through the kinks, it's a great place to get going. Yeah.
Kyle, we have a saying, which is think big, start small, and scale fast. And so I'd encourage that last one's important. Many people are starting small, but they haven't thought through the scaling of whatever it is. And that's an important part of getting into production and solving the problem, getting past just the playing in a POC framework is just, how do I roll this out so it actually is solving the problem?
Right. That's a great call out.
And I think one of the challenges that we face and the MSPs face is you have a set of data that you've had, in your kingdom, probably haven't had to think as much about its security, its privacy, its levels of access to the extent that you'll need to now that we have this. You don't have to know SQL syntax to query, right? Now you can use natural language to query against that data set. And if AI finds that data set, it's not that AI changes your permissions, it's that it can answer a question against something you always had access to and had no idea.
Yeah.
So now we're having to think about it. I think there's a parallel for us that saw the internet generation. There was a level of security you had to have, and grandma had to have, until she had a modem with no firewall on it.
Right.
And then there was a whole different level that you had to have, right? And I think right now we're in that, which is, do we even have the right controls? I was at a place in Seattle we won't name last week, but I think labeling and changing which labeling of all the data is something that we're probably going to hear more about.
Yeah.
Every type of data, whether that's structured, unstructured, raw documents, or a table, has labels on it. And then the warning of that being exposed, we're going to say, okay, labels that you used to think, well, anybody can have it, we're not going to you're going to get a warning before you share that. So that's another probably annoying but necessary step in our journey towards these kind of insights we're going to get with AI. Is we're going to have to look at our data again. Maybe boring, but we're going to have to look at our data in a whole new way to make sure that we're ready for whatever we're trying to ask for this to do, and that we're going to meet the expectations of the org and our own CISO and our own legal department, and we're not going to do an exposure to the street with well-intended people cranking out an agent pointing to a data source that they didn't realize had extra data in it.
Actually, just to build on that point, it was a great one, is where AI projects fall short of expectations is when somebody asks a question and they don't get the right or good answer, right? And
Yeah,
you're like,
good call.
this isn't working, right? Well, and it's, why is it not working? And it goes back to, what was the source? What information did it have access to? Because the more wrong answers that get produced, whether it's trying to get insights or otherwise, the less confidence the executive team or whoever is trying to use the tool is going to have. And then you reduce your adoption, or you're like, oh, this didn't work, right? And so you have this, you have the hype, and then you have this valley of disillusionment, right? Where people kind of replace it in with, hey, when I click 2 levers into this question, I'm getting very poor answers. And it's
right.
Again, it's not the technology's fault.
Right.
It's really the what it had access to. And I think again, people are starting to have that realization that this isn't as easy as it's maybe been portrayed. Again, depending on what problem you're trying to solve, it can't solve everything. You have to apply the tool to the right job.
And I call that the long tail problem. Like you can install an agent and get some really good results for these few use cases, and you can show a demo of that, and some famous search engine companies have done just that. But the reality is the full data set and your use cases that have really bad results sometimes undermine the whole implementation. Because if you're going to give a customer service agent data, yes, I can create a demo. I can install an agent that accesses our data, and there'll be that help desk question that I can show off. You say, hey, I cut my time of resolution. But then there's going to be a bunch of them at the low percentage level that give a completely false made up answer. How do you guard against that? And so I think that AI has advanced a lot, but we still have to meet it. And it takes some energy to meet it. And it's not a, if anybody's trying to sell you that you can install an agent and it's, you're off to the races, I think you need to be cautious. I'm not going to say that maybe someone hasn't solved it. Maybe they have, but I think we have to be judicious about our proof of concepts and make sure that we're looking for the edge cases, because they're not hard to find, at least in the implementations I've seen.
I got a question for
All
Ben.
right.
Ben, you work at one of the top, arguably one of the top, if not even top 10, maybe top 5 computing companies in the world, right? As far as resources and spend and what you guys are solving for, man, I'd love access. We can talk about this later. I'd love access to the lab. Let's go, see what we can't talk about.
Right.
But beyond that, like you guys, you do a lot of studying, you do a lot of looking back and saying like, okay, we're about to chase this thing. What does it look like? What's the opportunity? Last year you did something with Accenture, and it was like, what you guys refer to as your micro, your SMBs, sub 250 employee counts. The opportunity between now and 2030 was something like 7.98, or let's just round up $80 billion. So can you, I know you engage in this conversation quite a bit. Can you, for the average MSP, they're chasing these opportunities with these SMB customers out there. Can you help paint the picture of, hey, in a couple of years from now, how is AI actually driving benefit back to their clients?
Yeah, super question, and one I talk quite extensively about. That market, right, that the MSPs serve, that we affectionately refer to as a small medium business, is one of the biggest employers and biggest contributors to global GDP, right? If you look at the whole of that market, and the opportunity for automation, improvement, efficiency is very high. That's what the Accenture study shows. And if you any of the news press about the hype around AI is around efficiencies and productivity gains. The interesting thing about smaller organizations is they tend to be able to move much faster than a larger, more established enterprise that has all the layers of management, bureaucracy, and red tape and things that go with in it, to change course or reinvent themselves. And again, a vast majority of innovation comes from smaller organizations who typically started because they saw a problem in their market that wasn't being solved or satisfied. And so they went and created their company to go do that. And now you have this technology coming in that can make it easier to do some of those things, whether it's changing customer experience, whether it's automating manual processes. I think there's still, as far as I'm concerned, and I started my career in banking, which is a very paper intensive industry for a long time. There's still, in many small and medium businesses, far too much paper in their processes, far too much keying in of one thing in this system into another system. So all of those are areas for opportunities for automation, whether it's agents or just integrations. But the mental model I have for a small medium business is there's a customer journey that you have, and there's a data journey through your organization, from finding a new customer to collecting on a payment, to satisfying that customer kind of ongoing. And for me, for MSPs out there, right, if we think about how, and we were talking off camera about kind of how the internet changed a lot of experiences for everyone. I think we can all admit that the internet's why I got into technology, because I was convinced it would change banking. I was right. It just took a lot longer than in my 20s I had patience for. But AI has the potential, and I would argue, and I'd submit to you guys, it's changing faster than maybe the internet was back then from a technology point of view, right?
Absolutely.
And the adoption, the consumer adoption, the consumer awareness is at a huge peak compared to kind of the consumer adoption of the internet. So you have this sort of perfect opportunity for a smaller organization that has a leader who and I like to frame it this way. Every company has a competitive advantage. They win for some reason, whether it's service, they know the customer better, they have better selection, like whatever it is, but they have something that they're competing on. And if this technology can help you compete, gain new customers, grow your business, then that's why people are interested. And for the MSPs out there, the opportunity is, how do you help these smaller companies, these entrepreneurs, do just that? Wield this technology so that they're not spending time on paperwork and doing things that could be automated, and they're spending more time selling, providing better service, or satisfying their customers, because that's what they want to be doing anyway, right? At the end of the day, they want to be with their customers. They don't want to be maybe doing the technology part, which is why they've hired the MSP in the first place. How do you help them grow their business? Because that's what every one of their customers is trying to do. And I think AI has a huge opportunity to help MSPs get more efficient so they can help more customers, but then also to help their end customers do things in a more effective, efficient manner.
Absolutely agree.
Mhm.
So, and that honestly brings up a good point. So, we're talking about that adoption. We're talking about, your data, your security. Let's say we've got all of that implemented, right? So we've got it. We've got our data. We've got an AI model attached to it. At that point, what are we looking at as far as like data insights? Can we just magically have it look at all of our data and give us business insights? I think Keith has a rant that I love about this. But Ben, I want to kind of kick that one off to you first too. What are your thoughts on leveraging the data that you have in your models for your business insights?
So here's the thing, and I think it's really important, again, back to demystifying, separating generative AI and the large language models from AI and machine learning, because they do different things. They're fundamentally different. They're all related. And I do think that AI and ML has the ability to look at more data than we can, right? And to look for anomalies, to look for patterns that we couldn't see as humans. If you have a lot of data, that is one thing that they excel at, is pulling out patterns and seeing things that would be very difficult for us to put together. So that in and of itself, call it traditional AI ML, still has an immense amount of value for MSPs who have a bunch of data across hundreds of customers, probably, right? To get more effective, more efficient, look for patterns, personalize, do some of these things. The generative side of it is super interesting because it augments an ability to communicate in a new and different way, right? And so we've got a great customer of ours. I talked to the CTO 2 days ago, and he said, "Hey, we put a bot in front of our service desk, right? So we have people emailing us questions, and the bot is answering 70% of them, right? But they've controlled what the bot can answer, right? So, and this is what is really important. If you just leave it open-ended, you're going to get what was said before, right? Like that long tail of just stuff that just doesn't make sense and frustrates people. But you can create guardrails around what the bots can do. And they do that very well, and they stay inside because they've been designed to do this thing, not all things. They've been designed to do this thing, which is, if I'm honest, how we've been developing computers for a very long time. We put instructions in and we put data in, and you get a very predictable output. That still applies, but the generative nature of the large language models and these things opens up Pandora's box, but also opens up the level of variability, which actually people aren't as comfortable with, right? The being wrong, because as technologists for the last 20 plus years, we've put stuff out that had a very predictable result because of the way it was written in the instructions that it was given. So I think we need to change the expectations, but still leverage or ground in, there's still value in enhanced communication. Like I tell everybody that the LLMs and the models that I leverage give me a very good first draft of whatever I'm doing, right? I'm not starting with a blank piece of paper. I have a very workable first draft, but it still requires me to go from 80% to 100. But I'm not starting from scratch. So my time has been compressed, which is a huge value to me as a professional. And again, it's right tool for the right job, and thinking these things can solve all problems is the wrong mindset. Drilling into, this is my use case and this is what I'm going to solve for, I think you're going to have a much higher satisfaction rate if you go that approach.
I would agree with that, Keith.
Yeah. I think he kind of nailed it. I think the guidance that I give people is natural language, can be used, but let's think about giving it options and letting it pick the right option. Let's not just leave it open-ended and say, wow, I can ask ChatGPT anything. Well, someone's going to call your phone line and a teenager is going to call it and ask it anything.
Yeah.
But if you have a set of options, give it a set of options, and then it'll use natural language to pick which option is the best one, or say, I can get you an operator if it can't find one. But if you build a solution from the beginning where it's just open-ended and you can You have an IVR that you can ask anything. I think that's just setting yourself up. But to go back to your data point, I do want to touch on this. LLMs language, there's no data in that. The word data is not in there. It is against data, I get it. But traditional ML, if you want operational insights, traditional ML, if an LLM introduced you to AI, great. And now you can think about ML against your data, great. But LLM on your data is not where we are right now, right? So there's a data scientist that needs to do a lot of work. And then maybe you can use natural language to get that final result, but 80–90% of the work still needs to be done for you to distill that data first. So if you're looking for operational insights, you still need a data scientist to distill a lot of that. And then maybe there's a new way to interact with it. But that distillation, still 90% of the work needs to be done on that data. So at least that's a rough number. That's just throwing out a number. But I still think we need to set an expectation that great, but traditional ML is still the way to get operational insights.
It's easy to look at the two outcomes or potential outcomes with going with generative versus traditional ML. But again, if you're looking to control and manage that output and have a greater response or a higher percentage of accuracy, greater response, that traditional ML is the way to go. In fact, there's no secret that ConnectWise spends a lot of money with AWS, right? Our backbone is built on your technology and has been for decades.
And we appreciate that partnership very much. And it is just that, a partnership.
Yeah, absolutely. And honestly, what we've been able to accomplish with some of the really meaningful outcomes with AI have not been AI, they've been machine learning. And training models and training particular for very specific outcomes, we need those outcomes to be a 99+% accuracy because our partners rely on those decisions, and the variability of that is dangerous. So we've that traditional ML is definitely worth it. So we've found over the years that even the last couple of years, if we're looking for accuracy, we lean into, all right, we've got to train a model, and it all happens through AWS. So that's been great. Speaking of things that you guys do well, Ben, one of the things that I have just been thoroughly impressed with your company is not only you driving the front end edge of technology and help leading the way, and hey, we're bringing in. And you guys were first to say, look, we're gonna let you have choice. You can kind of pick your models here, and that's a kind of foundational element of what you bring to the market. The other thing that I have been floored by is your training content, the materials that you guys make available. As a training and certification organization, you're just bar none. You just create great, exceptional stuff, and your AI ML stuff is on top of it. Can you talk a little bit about the why and the reason for that for AWS?
Yeah, happy to. We're passionate, obviously, about technology, but we're also passionate about the builders who build with that technology. They solve problems with that technology, and with the rapid change in this field, and it's no surprise. Like there's knowledge gaps. We were talking about data scientists and folks with PhDs. They're hard to come by and in high demand, and usually aren't available in the marketplace for a small medium business to pick up one of those resources. And so seeing that on the horizon, and understanding kind of the trajectory of where things were going, we felt it absolutely critical to invest in skill development, making it easier for folks who are either transitioning career. We have a whole set of training targeting veterans who are entering the workforce, and then just overall technologists who are looking to gain knowledge, both gamifying with our Quest product, which is a game that's pretty fun to hands-on learn. And then we just released last month, actually mid last month, our beta version of AI Foundation. So we had a previous cloud foundations, which when we invented the cloud, we felt we had to educate people on what that was and how it all worked, and the building blocks there. We've done the same thing for AI, which exposes folks to the different things, how they work together, security data are all part of that training. And there's a validation that you can get that is an AWS certification, which has, again, it demonstrates an understanding to your employer, a future employer, your boss, that says, hey, I've learned some things and I'm ready to apply it. We've then gone on to beta release a data associate, data engineering associate, as well as a machine learning associate. And then there is the specialty, which is a pro that's been at this for a while. So we're stepping up the levels of understanding and the expectations of the folks who've earned, those credentials in the marketplace, so that you, if you're looking to hire someone, can have a good understanding of what they're bringing to the table. And this is so new, and all of us have said, right? It's changing so fast that investing in skills and kind of baselining and evolving that over time is absolutely critical. So we've committed to train millions. There's a bunch of free training as well that you can get access to on the training site, and then there is some paid services to prepare you for the exams as well.
I can tell you, if you go survey an MSP, top 3 for every MSP on the planet is a resource gap. Finding resources that have the knowledge and skill set to solve the problems that they have. And here we are at the impetus of the beginning of a new skill that a lot of them, or most of them, don't have. And I'd say it would be critical for every MSP out there to assign these courses to some of the nerds in your organization to kind of check those boxes, because on the other side of it is all the potential, all the potential business that's coming down the pipe.
Well, and Kyle, it's a retention play too for folks, right? Is investing in your people, and it's your most valuable asset inside any organization, and developing their skills, keeping them current, especially if you got into technology because of if you like technology and you know that it changes, you want to be learning the latest stuff. And I think any leaders out there, I'd encourage you to have a training plan for your folks as a retention, or even a way to attract new hires, to show them, hey, we invest in you and your skill development, because ultimately as a technologist, you want to know how to do things, and having a path and a career path to do that is pretty critical.
Absolutely agreed. And, I'm glad that we talked about that. We'll go ahead and we'll share the link to y'all's training.
Oh, thank you.
In the series here and in the chat. That way, anyone who's interested can start upskilling. Because I absolutely agree with you. Like, that is absolutely critical to start filling that skills gap, because it's just going to get wider and wider if you don't, right?
So there's a lot out there. And one of the cool things we've done is under our training, there's a spot called Skill Builder. Mm-hmm. And it can be about, I want to learn data engineering. It'll give you the courses to actually learn those things and kind of stay in that track. Because if you just go to the catalog, it can be, there's a lot there to absorb, and having things that are directly aligned is pretty important.
Absolutely agree with you there. So I know we've got just like a few minutes left. Any of you have any closing thoughts that we want to very briefly touch on?
I want to thank you, Ben, for joining us. Appreciate it. And to say that, someone of your caliber, and I'm not trying to blow smoke, but someone of your caliber to engage in conversations with MSPs, it's important that they recognize, AWS sometimes you guys are a solution builder's dream, right? Yeah. So we wield and leverage you quite a bit, but the average MSP, they know you, they work with you, but not in ways that there's more opportunity for them that they're not paying attention to. So I'll give you this opportunity to say, hey, what does the MSP need to know that they don't know about AWS?
Again, this gets to working backwards from their customers and the problems or the things, anticipating the changing needs of their customers. I think every customer's expectations for technology are going up. So learning is important, engaging us. There's lots of ways to do it. And the ConnectWise team does a great job of providing services out to your end customers that are ultimately leveraging us underneath the covers. I would say this: learn as much as possible. there are more resources that you could take advantage of, whether they be training or otherwise. And at the end of the day, you're not in this alone, right? We want nothing more than for ConnectWise to be wildly successful, and the MSPs you serve to be wildly successful, and the end customers, that small and medium business, to be successful. We believe that technology is a key enabler, and we want to put out the tools to make it as easy as possible. But it's up to those leaders out there to take that initiative, to learn more, figure out how to do more. And it unfortunately takes time to do that, which those small, medium businesses are just short on time, right? And those MSPs that are out there growing and serving their customers are short on time. But this is something that I'd encourage folks to do, is to really get maximum value, is invest time in understanding what's possible, so that you can solve problems as quickly and efficiently as you can.
Absolutely agree with you, and I appreciate that. Ben, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a pleasure. You've been awesome to talk to. And as always, everybody, since we're out of time, we'll go ahead and wrap this. But just remember, knowledge is power. And with great power comes the risk of breaking things even faster. So make sure you're doing your due diligence. Until next time, have a great one, everybody.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.